How do you develop your child's full potential? What does your child need from you? In our last broadcast, I gave you the first 3 principles that will help you develop your child's full potential. Principle number 1 is that your child's greatest need is for security and significance. And we talked about in our last broadcast how you do that by setting boundaries and bringing affirmation. Principle number 2 was that the number 1 need of your child and the number 1 goal of you as a parent is to teach your child to obey. I mean, to put it this way, you want your child to learn to be holy, not necessarily happy. If you help them be holy, learn to obey, learn to hear your voice and obey you, I will tell you what, they will end up happy. And then number 3, we had to learn that obedience is a developmental process. At different ages and different stages, your child learns different things. We're going to jump right into today's broadcast with principle number 4. Are you ready? Let's roll.
Parents are just too busy nowadays. They don't take that time with their children, and a lot of times it's not intentional. It's just they're so caught up in their world of being more successful, of just looking at themselves and wanting more.
As adults, we have confused our children to no end. We have given them directives that are simply words, and they turn around and see how hypocritical we can be in our actions.
I think these kids are wounded hearts. A lot of these kids are wounded so deeply because of the baggage that they've brought to the table.
You come to a point where you feel like you have no control over them. You don't have their heart anymore. And that's when you feel, as a parent, I feel, oh my goodness, I don't have his heart anymore. And if I don't have his heart, I can't shape him and mold him.
Where are the models? Where are the models that are showing girls how to become women and boys how to become men?
We have to make a living. We have to put food on the table. We have to pay our mortgage. And we have to do these things. And we're exhausted by the end of the day, by the end of the week. And that's just what happens to our children.
I am hopeful that we're seeing a turn. You know, there are several parents who are saying, we're not going to allow the public as it is, the public schools. So we're not going to allow the secular world to run away with our children. There are parents who are saying, okay, we're going to take a stand.
Our society is so different from 20, 30 years ago, and we have to just continually look around us and look at those resources around us to incorporate them into our world so that we can be better parents for our children, so we can emotionally be there for them.
God is not happy with us, I don't think, when we allow one of his children to simply be raised through these messy situations.
The best resource is God himself, because he knows that child intimately. He knows what he's going to be like years from now. He knows what he's going to be like as a man, as a woman. He knows that child so much because he created that child.
I don't see any resources in the world today other than the resources that are available to us through the Word of God, because everything else will end in a destructive behavior, or it'll be a dead-end street.
Okay, now, principle number 4, you must commit to providing the necessary resources for your child to learn obedience. We said it's his number 1 job, right? You've got to commit, and I'm going to tell you it's a huge commitment. You must commit to provide your kids the raw material, the resources to learn to obey. They're not going to learn it on their own. Now, you may say to yourself, wait a second, I'm providing the resources. They live in my house, they're in my car, I have food, they got nice clothes. I mean, you don't understand how many resources I'm giving them away. I want to tell you that I'm not talking about physical resources. I'm going to talk about spiritual resources. In fact, there's a correlation that possibly if you have more physical resources, your job might be even harder. Article in Forbes magazine talks about why grade A executives get an F as parents. And this is really interesting. It says, for all their brains and competence, powerful, successful executives and professionals often have more trouble raising their kids than all but the very poor. Alas, the intensity and single-mindedness that makes for corporate achievement are often the opposite of the qualities needed to be an effective parent. And then they came up with an interesting statistic. It said, don't think that your brains, money, and success can pave the way to parenting glory. In a survey of large corporations providing extensive insurance coverage, MedStat Systems, an Ann Arbor, Michigan healthcare information firm, discovered that some 36% of children of executives undergo outpatient treatment for psychiatric or drug abuse problems every year versus 15% of children in non-executives in the same companies. See, we are in a world where we unconsciously are being squeezed into, if you financially provide, if they have nice stuff and nice clothes and are in a good school, maybe even a private school, and the best educational tools and the nicest computer and maybe their own laptop, that you've done your job. And what I want to tell you is what your kids need are a different set of resources. And they need resources to help them obey. And there are 5 resources or tools that flow right out of Deuteronomy chapter 6. And you got that pen? You need a pen. I'm going to read this passage, and as I hit certain phrases, I'm going to ask you to circle it. Because these 5 resources are what you need and what I need to help my child obey. Are you ready? Hear, O Israel, Deuteronomy starts out. Chapter 6, verse 4. The Lord is our God. The Lord is one. Circle that phrase. The Lord is one. And as you circle that, this isn't just an intellectual statement. This is a theological statement. This is written in a world where there's all these gods and all these isms and all these things everywhere. And God speaks through Moses and says, Hear, O Israel. This is the great Shema. This is the theological laying down of the gauntlet for all of Israel. Our God is the creator. There is only one God. It's a theological statement. We believe in one God, Yahweh. Second, and you, he's speaking to parents here, shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Will you circle, you shall love the Lord your God? And these words which I am commanding you shall be on your heart. Will you circle that? Parents, you're supposed to love the Lord your God. And these words that I'm speaking, this biblical content, circle the phrase shall be on your heart. And then once it's on your heart, and you shall teach them diligently to your sons. Will you circle, teach them diligently? And not only are we to teach them systematically or diligently to our sons, but you shall talk of them. Circle that last phrase. You shall talk of them. Well, when should you talk about God and educate your kids? Well, he tells you when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way and when you lie down and when you rise up. That's kind of like all the time, isn't it? And then notice verse 8, you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontals on your forehead, and you shall write them on your doorposts of your house and on your gates. Will you put a box around the word hand, put a box around the word frontals, put a box around the word doorpost, and put a box around the word gates. By the way, we're doing basic Bible study. The way to study the Scriptures is first make observations. It's not what I think it says. What we want to find out is, what does it say? And so you make observations, then we make interpretation, and then we'll apply it. I believe out of those 5 that you circled, let me give you 5 resources for your children. Number 1, doctrinal truth. You must give your kids, in a world of relative truth, this is right, this is wrong. This is who God is. This is who Jesus is. He is fully God, fully man, Savior of the world. He is the way, the truth, and the life. You must teach your kids doctrinal truth. It's the foundation of their whole world. And they're living in a sea of relativity. And on the tube, and on the music, and MTV, and then at school, everyone is telling them there's a million ways to do a million things, and no one's right about anything. Moms and dads, resource number 1, teach them what's true, teach them what's right. Resource number 2 is personal devotion. That's a resource that you give them. It says, you shall love the Lord with all your heart. We're back to modeling, aren't we? Your kids need to be early in the morning opening the bedroom door and on to use your bathroom like they're not supposed to, and they need to accidentally catch you kneel down to your bed with an open Bible, praying over a passage, because it's the habitual thing that you do in your heart, in your life. Your kids need to see you get a phone call about grandma or granddad or a close friend, and you find out they have cancer, and they need to see you with tears streaming down your face, pulling the family together and praying and crying out to God. It's worth a zillion sermons. The resource we give our kids is first doctrinal truth. They need to see your passion, your personal devotion as a priority. I don't know how busy you are, but you're not too busy to spend time with God. We're not too busy to read romance novels. We're not too busy to watch TV. We catch ESPN. We read the Wall Street Journal, Business Week and Forbes, People magazine. You're not too busy. Your kids will become what you are. We must spend time with God. They must see that devotion. It's a great resource. Third is biblical knowledge. You must know the word and where to take your child. Notice it says, these words I'm commanding you shall be on your heart. On your heart. That means there are key passages that are memorized. I mean, there's a passage all my children know, and they didn't even have to memorize it. They heard it so much in our home. When they were talking and being mean to one another and punching each other, and we're having all these struggles in our home, and they were being sarcastic and on each other at the table, that's kind of like our home was like. Sounds a lot like yours, doesn't it? Right? Well, Ephesians 4:21. Ephesians 4:29. Let no unwholesome word proceed out of your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification, according to the need of the moment, that it may give grace to those who hear. You memorized that when you were growing up in my family. And then we warned you a couple times, and then when it kept coming out of your mouth, you took a dime out and put it in a jar. We're going to give it to missions. Third, fourth time, you take a quarter out and put it into a jar. We're going to take seriously. But you know what I've learned? The average parent doesn't know where to go in this book to either teach or correct their child. And therefore, it's a lot of try hard and do this more and yelling and screaming and pushing. And you know what? You have to know the Bible. You've got to know the Scriptures so that God can give you the knowledge base to teach your children in a way that they'll embrace wisdom. The fourth resource is systematic instruction. Did you notice? You shall teach them diligently. This isn't haphazardly. This isn't that, you're talking in the car and a verse comes up or you hear a song. This is every Tuesday night we have family devotions. This is meeting every other week with one of your children, and you go out for coffee or breakfast or lunch or dinner, and you do a Bible study together. This is, a couple, 3 times a week. This is every night when you go to bed, you read a Bible study when they're small. It's systematic instruction that's on your schedule for your children. That's what this means. And they need it. And I know it is the most difficult thing to be consistent in, and if you're feeling overwhelming guilt right now, I want to give you right now, are you ready? Here's a nice big eraser. Erase all that guilt and say, Lord, I'm sorry we've been so inconsistent. We have no family devotions, but this week we're going to start.